Democrats campaigning like Walter Mondale. The tax policy for the Democrat Party is to raise taxes, but not a peep on the open fire hydrant of government spending. This is not a word on the government's rigged game against you. Nobody's talking about this. This is what's going on inside the hallways of Washington. It's called use it or lose it spending. It's an open secret among federal agencies. It's about the power of bureaucrats, which is their budget. Now, when they don't spend their budget goes down the next year and they lose their power. That's why they do wild end-of-year spending sprees, wasting your money. Joining me now to talk about this is the president of Citizens Against Government Waste. He is Tom Schatz. Tom, where's the executive action or congressional action to stop all of this?
It has to be congressional action because Congress has the 1974 Budget Act. They have done nothing to reform it. And the way it works is unlike any other entity that you can imagine. In other organizations, if you save money, you're next year going to be working with a better budget because you're going to be rewarded for saving the money. In Washington, the more you spend, the more you get in the following year.
It's crazy.
So they base the next year on how much you spend in the current year. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense, and it's so unfair to the American family. That's what watchdog groups have repeatedly told us on the show. I mean, as you point out, no reward, no trophy for being under budget. So Congress is always going to overspend because they're in this gear. They're either in a permanent state of outrage or in a constant state of emergency. Shouldn't agencies be forced to roll their budget savings into next year's budget?
That's certainly one idea that would be effective. The House actually passed something called the Budget Cost Cutters Award Act. They would reward bureaucrats for saving money, and that way they wouldn't have as much incentive to spend it at the end of the year. But they should start with a zero-based budget, figure out exactly what the agency needs, and rather than basing everything on how much they spend, they should base it on what they need.
Yeah.
And that cannot possibly be everything they spent in that particular year. That's not the way anybody else works.
And Tom, we calculated at least $1 trillion worth of empty federal office buildings littering the U.S. landscape. You know, the watchdog group Open the Books found the rigged game resulted in wild spending $100 billion in the final fiscal month of the fiscal year. Look at this: more than $300,000 on booze and alcohol, nearly $700,000 on golf carts, nearly $2 million on musical equipment like pianos and tubas, and money on lobster tail and crab. I mean, come on, really? And the Democrats are saying they want to raise taxes. Fix this first. Shouldn't they fix this first?
Absolutely, but the incentive really on both sides of the aisle seems to be just spend whatever you want on whatever your priority might be, defense for Republicans, non-defense for Democrats. Some agencies, like the State Department in 2016, spent 37% of its budget in the last month. That's about 6 times more than they would normally spend during the rest of the year. And the golf carts you mentioned, 42% of the money spent on golf carts in the past year was spent in the last month.
You know, that money could have gone toward things like the border wall. I mean, the Democrats always complaining about the president, you know, wanting to build a border wall. I mean, Tom, let me back up. What we're talking about is, you know, sofa, cushion change, loose change under the sofa cushions compared to the $93 trillion for the socialist Green New Deal. There's nothing the president can do here about this?
The president has proposed 5% cuts for all agencies. His budget reflects that. Congress, unfortunately, will reject that idea. But he can't stop the agencies from spending. They have the appropriations from Congress, and the budget process works, as we've said, based on how much you spend in the current year. That sets up your budget for the next year. So no one has an incentive to reduce spending, which is why passing legislation that would reward bureaucrats for cutting spending would be helpful. And rolling the money over and zero-based budgeting would be helpful as well.
Tom Schatz of Citizens Against Government Waste. Good to see you, sir. Come back soon.